My name's Walter, but everyone calls me Walt. This story happened a few years back when I was totally burnt out. Every day felt the same. Wake up, work, come home exhausted, repeat. One evening, as I was staring out at the busy streets below, it hit me. I needed a break. I needed some peace and quiet, far away from the noise and chaos of the city. A cabin in the mountains sounded perfect, somewhere to just relax and forget about everything. After hours of browsing, I finally found a cabin on Airbnb that seemed perfect. It was affordable, remote, and exactly what I needed. Sure, there were a few red flags. The listing only had a few dark, blurry pictures and no reviews. But it was just for a few days, and the price was too good to pass up. So I decided to take the risk. When I got there, the cabin looked just like the pictures. Small, a bit run down, with chipped paint and an old metal roof. But it had this rustic charm that I kind of liked. It was in a clearing, surrounded by thick forest that seemed to stretch on forever. There was no cell service, which felt freeing, but also a little concerning. If something went wrong, I wouldn't be able to call for help. The isolation started to feel less peaceful and more unsettling as I stood there. The host told me to find the key under a loose floorboard on the porch. I found it and let myself in. The inside was small but cozy. One room served as the living area, kitchen, and bedroom, and there was a tiny bathroom in the back. Dusty old curtains hung over the windows, and there was a wood stove that looked like it hadn't been used in years. I spent the rest of the day hiking and enjoying the fresh mountain air. It felt so good to be away from everything. I got back to the cabin around sunset, and as night fell, the isolation really started to sink in. It was so quiet I could almost hear the silence itself, only broken by rustling leaves or the distant call of an owl. I settled into bed with a book, using a small lamp as my only light. Around midnight, I heard a faint tapping, like fingers drumming on the window. It was steady, like someone wanted my attention. I turned off the lamp, leaving the room in darkness, and listened closely. The tapping stopped, and then I heard footsteps crunching on the leaves outside. I held my breath, trying to convince myself it was just an animal. I hesitated, then slowly got up and peeked through a gap in the curtains. It was pitch black outside, but I could see a figure at the edge of the trees facing the cabin. They were just standing there, watching. I backed away from the window. The door was locked, but the lock was old, and I wasn't sure how strong it was. I grabbed a kitchen knife and sat on the bed, listening for any sound. Minutes passed, and everything went quiet again. Maybe it was all in my head, I thought, but I still felt tense. Then I heard footsteps on the porch, slow, deliberate steps that made the old wood creak. The doorknob rattled and turned slightly, like someone was testing it. Someone was trying to get inside. I called out, "Who's there?" My voice broke the silence. The rattling stopped, but there was no answer. I waited, each second feeling like an hour. Finally, after what felt like forever, I heard the footsteps move away, down the porch steps and back into the woods. I stayed awake all night, lights on, clutching the knife. When morning finally came, I packed my things as quickly as I could, my eyes darting to the windows, half expecting to see someone still watching me. As I stepped onto the porch, I noticed something that made me freeze. Carved into the wooden beam beside the door in messy, jagged letters was the word, "Welcome." I wondered if they had been watching me all night. I didn't look back as I walked to my car, only feeling relief once the cabin was far behind. I drove until I reached a small town with a diner and stopped to calm down. I reported what happened to Airbnb, typing out all the details. I kept wondering if they would believe me. But they never found the host. The listing disappeared soon after, and I still don't know who was out there that night or what they wanted. That trip was supposed to be a peaceful escape, a chance to enjoy nature. Instead, it became a nightmare. One that still haunts me whenever I hear a knock on my door late at night. I've always liked small towns, the kind where everyone knows each other and every building has a story. When I was a kid, my family used to take weekend trips to places like that. There was just something so comforting about the small streets, the little shops, and the slower pace of life. Lately, I've been missing that feeling, the sense of peace and simplicity. So, last spring, I found an Airbnb listing for a cottage in 𝗧𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗲, New York. It was just a few hours' drive, but it felt like a perfect chance to get away from the noise and find a little comfort. The listing said the cottage was cozy and rustic, with a private bedroom and bathroom. The photos made it look super warm and inviting, and the reviews all called it charming and quiet. Mark, the host, answered my questions, and even suggested a few things to do nearby. I packed light, just some clothes for the weekend, my camera, and a couple of books. It was going to be a simple, relaxing getaway. The drive was easy, and as I got closer, it really felt like I was stepping into a different world. There were small shops, tree-lined streets. Everything just felt slower and calmer. I got to the Airbnb around 5 p.m., and honestly, it looked even better in person. The small cottage had a lovely garden and a gravel driveway, and with the setting sun, everything just looked perfect. Mark had left the key in a lockbox by the front door. I found it, let myself in, and immediately felt at home. The inside was just as charming as the pictures. A plush couch, mismatched armchairs, and shelves full of old books and decorations. The kitchen was small, but had everything I needed, and I could already picture myself making coffee in the mornings and enjoying it on the porch. After unpacking, I looked around the house. The bedroom was cozy, with a bed covered in a soft quilt. The bathroom was small but clean, with fluffy towels neatly hung up. Everything seemed perfect. My stress started to fade, and I finally felt myself relax. I decided to take a quick shower before heading out to explore the town. The hot water felt amazing, and I let it wash away the stress of the past few weeks. But while I was drying off, I got this weird feeling like someone was watching me. I shook my head, trying to brush it off as just nerves. It was a new place, and I was alone. I got dressed quickly and figured a walk might help clear my mind. The town was so peaceful. I wandered around, took in the sights, and eventually stopped at a small cafe for dinner. The food was good and the people were friendly, but that strange feeling just wouldn't go away. By the time I got back to the Airbnb, it was around 9 p.m., and it was already dark. The only light was the small porch lamp. Once inside, I locked the door and decided to call it a night. I was tired, and the bed looked so inviting. But as I settled in, something caught my eye. A faint red light in the corner of the room. At first, I thought it was just a reflection, or maybe a light from outside. But when I looked closer, I realized it was coming from the smoke detector on the ceiling. The light was blinking steadily, and something about it just felt off. I stood on the bed for a closer look. The smoke detector looked normal, but the blinking light seemed strange. I unscrewed the cover and couldn't believe what I saw. Inside, next to the usual parts, was a small camera, its lens pointed right at the bed. I put the cover back, my mind racing to make sense of it. I scanned the room, my eyes darting from corner to corner. Then I noticed the decorative clock on the dresser. I picked it up and turned it around. There it was, another tiny lens, barely visible, hidden in the clock face. I rushed to the bathroom, trying to stay calm. I checked the mirror, the light fixtures, anything that seemed off. Behind the vent cover, I found another camera. This one angled toward the shower. Someone had been watching me, recording me during the most private moments of my stay. I grabbed my phone and called the local police. I explained what was happening. The dispatcher told me to leave the house immediately and wait for an officer. I hung up, grabbed my bag, and rushed out the door, my eyes scanning the dark yard for any signs of movement. I waited by my car, each minute feeling like an hour. I kept glancing at the house, expecting to see someone at the windows. Finally, after what felt like forever, a patrol car pulled up and 2 officers stepped out. One of them greeted me. "Miss Alicia?" I nodded, and then I explained everything, my words tumbling out as I showed them the hidden cameras. They went inside while I stood by the car, hugging myself against the cold. When they came back, they confirmed there were multiple hidden cameras recording the bedroom and bathroom. They took my statement and promised to investigate, but I could tell they weren't hopeful. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. The rest of the night was a blur. I drove to a nearby motel and checked in. I barely slept. Knowing my privacy had been violated was just too much to handle. I felt exposed and vulnerable. The next day, I reported the incident to Airbnb. They apologized, promised to investigate, and took down the listing. I got a refund, but it didn't change what had happened. The damage was done, and no amount of money or apologies could make up for the violation I experienced. I couldn't stop thinking about all the other people who might have stayed there, not knowing they were being watched. How many others had been recorded? How many videos were out there, circulating without their knowledge? Since that weekend, I've been super careful about staying anywhere other than a hotel. I know hidden cameras can be anywhere, but the idea of another cozy Airbnb makes me uneasy. What was supposed to be a peaceful getaway had turned into a nightmare, one that still makes me nervous every time I see a smoke detector or a decorative clock. I used to love staying in unique, out-of-the-way places. Now I just want somewhere I can feel safe. My name is Joanne. Visiting Italy had always been a dream of mine, and last summer I finally made it happen. I picked a small town in southern Italy for its rich history and stunning views, just what I needed to escape my busy life. Instead of a hotel, I booked an Airbnb, a small, quaint and charming house away from the tourist areas. The host, Luca, seemed friendly and had great reviews, which put me at ease. After a long flight, I finally arrived, exhausted but excited. Luca's directions led me to a quiet house at the edge of town. He was waiting at the front gate, smiling. He handed me the keys and gave me a quick tour. The house was small but cozy, with an old-fashioned kitchen, a living room full of books, and a bedroom with a balcony overlooking the countryside. After showing me where the extra towels were and how to use the old stove, Luca left me to settle in. Even though I was wiped out, I couldn't resist exploring a bit before dark. I headed out for a short walk. The streets were quiet, with only a few locals around. I stopped at a small cafe for dinner, fresh pasta and a glass of wine. By the time I got back, it was almost 9 p.m., and the sun had set. The air was cool and everything felt peaceful. I locked the door and got ready for bed. The long day of travel had worn me out. My legs ached and my eyes were heavy. I was ready to crash. I changed into my pajamas and was just about to crawl into bed when I heard a sound. A click, like a lock turning. I froze and listened. It came again from the front door. I tiptoed to the living room and tried the door, but it wouldn't budge. It was locked, from the outside. I checked the windows, but they were all locked, and the latches wouldn't budge. I tried the back door, but it was the same, locked tight. I grabbed my phone and tried to call Luca, but there was no answer. That's when it hit me. I was trapped. I paced around the living room, not sure what to do. I didn't know anyone in town, and I barely spoke Italian. There had to be a reasonable explanation, right? Maybe it was some kind of old security feature. I tried calling Luca again, but still no answer. Hours went by, and the house grew colder. The only sound was the ticking of an old clock. I tried to distract myself with one of the books, but I couldn't focus. It was after midnight when I heard footsteps outside. Slow, steady steps that seemed to circle the house. They stopped near the front door, and I heard the handle rattle. Someone was out there. I rushed to the bedroom and locked the door. I pressed my ear against it, trying to hear what was happening. The footsteps moved away, but I was too scared to move. I knew I had to get help. I dialed the emergency number I had saved, hoping someone would understand me. The operator spoke some English, and I tried to explain what was happening, my voice barely above a whisper. They told me to stay where I was and that they would send someone. The next half hour felt like forever. I stayed in the bedroom, my back against the wall, listening to the noises outside, footsteps and scraping against the wall. Who was out there? Why had 𝗬𝗂 locked me in? Was this some kind of prank, or was it something worse? Finally, I heard a loud knock and voices calling out. I rushed to the window and saw the flashing lights of a police car. I ran to the door shouting that I was inside. Moments later, the lock clicked and the door swung open. 2 police officers stood there. They asked me a few questions. I tried to explain everything, though my Italian was pretty bad. One of the officers spoke some English, and between the 2 of us, we managed to piece together what had happened. They searched the house and the area around it, but there was no sign of 𝗬𝗂 or anyone else. They told me I would need to find somewhere else to stay for the night, and one of the officers offered to take me to a nearby hotel. I didn't sleep at all that night. The hotel room was nice, but every little sound made me jump. I kept thinking about 𝗬𝗂, his friendly smile, how he had shown me around. It all seemed so genuine, which made it feel like an even bigger betrayal. I couldn't understand why he would lock me in. The police said they would investigate, but I never heard anything more about it. The Airbnb listing disappeared the next day, and 𝗬𝗂's profile was gone too. When I got home, I reported everything to Airbnb. They apologized and said they would investigate. I got a refund, but it didn't change how I felt. The experience left me really uneasy. I used to love traveling, exploring new places, and meeting new people. But now, the idea of staying in a stranger's home makes me anxious. I still think about that night. The lock, the footsteps, being trapped. It was supposed to be an adventure, but it turned into a nightmare. I still don't know what 𝗬𝗂's intentions were, and maybe I never will. But one thing is for sure, I'll never stay in an Airbnb again.